Will Goldstein here, thekingscourt.com. Don't forget to subscribe. More people will come and watch the videos if you like the videos. If you subscribe, it doesn't cost you anything. Just hit the little button down there in the right hand corner and you'll be notified when videos come. So this video is called Reflections on Spinoza and Emotions. So I'm kind of it's like a book report or analysis, but it's only on the aspect of Spinoza that's dealing with emotions, his philosophy of emotions. So this is, anyway, the book. So, and it's copyrighted, so I can't really read it. I can only kind of gaze at it and, explain and put it in my own words and make comments on it. Or paraphrasing concepts that he has in here to give you an idea. So anyway, before he really gets into all those, we need to know where emotions are coming from. So that's kind of where he's starting. So he defines where these emotions are coming from as either adequate causes or inadequate causes. So inadequate causes are basically, again, these are my words defining what he's saying here. So you can get the book and read it if you want. So the adequate causes are things that we understand where they're coming from, and inadequate causes are basically we don't understand where they're coming from. And these actions, they can be done within us or without us. So it's either happening to us or it's happening in us, and it's happening to us, reflecting in what's happening within us. sort of. Okay. So the idea is that there's a modification of the body. There's a change in the body, and that's basically where the emotions are coming from. And we're the cause of when we're the cause of the emotion, that's an action. So when we decide to do something and we have an emotional response and we act on that emotion, then it's exactly that. It's an action. When we're not the cause of that emotion, it's still an emotion, then he calls that a passion. So that would be more inadequate. We really don't understand, we're not the cause of it. It's just happening. It's an emotion. It's a passion. Okay? In other words, the other idea, when it's an action, somebody just gets angry and they decide to act in their anger, well, then that's an action. Okay? I think that's pretty clear with this distinction between those two. So, the idea is that there's a change in the state of the body. There's impressions that happen on our mind and to us, and it creates images in our cells, and so then that's what's causing all these and stimulating all these emotions. Humans, just by the nature within ourselves, act on a basis of self-preservation. So that's the basic endeavor of all things, is for us is to act on a basis, like I said, of self-preservation. So everything that we encounter in life, we're kind of looking out how, and that's how, and the way that relates to emotions is the emotions that come or flow through us are a response to that act on basis of self-preservation. So he says that all emotions come from I would call them the big three: desire, joy, and sorrow. So there's adequate and inadequate emotions, the ones that we understand or don't understand. We are conscious of these emotions, and because we're conscious of them, there's an effort within us and that's related to our mind And when it's related to our mind, it's called will. So that's what he defines will is, an effort that's related to the mind alone. So it doesn't have anything to do with the body, it's related to the mind. There's some sort of effort, and that's related to the mind because it's not attached to the body. When it's attached to both the mind and the body, it's called an appetite or desire. So he's just distinguishing between something that's happening only in your mind and something that's happening in your mind and your body. Okay? Mind equals will, mind and body equals appetite or desire. And then he's going into some definitions. So desire's the essence that's inside man, and it's determined by an action and by any one of its modifications. So there's some sort of modification that's happening in the body, and that produces a desire that's conceived and determined as an action in that man, okay, or woman, whatever. Okay, so joy it's a passage, and it's a passage, and he's talking about degrees of perfection. So joy means there's increase in perfection. Sorrow in a perfection or the state of the human being. Sorrow is a passage when you're going from a greater to a lesser degree of perfection. He says that there's always some degree of perfection, even if sorrow, man shares. Even sadness is some degree, or it's just a lesser degree of perfection. That's what he's saying. Even sorrow, we can't if. So far as man shares any perfection, he's not sad. Okay, so he has some degree of perfection. So then he goes, now because emotions are related to a change, well, he defines astonishment as something where the mind is, or the imagination is fixed. So it's not, there is no change, it's just I'm astonished. So I'm just fixed on it. There's no, I guess that's a change, the state of a fix, but that's what the way he defines astonishment. Anyway, so now I'm going to go into more of the list of the emotions. So now we're actually dealing. So that's sort of like the introductory into the list of the emotions. So, but notice that when I'm giving this list, he says the big three: desire, joy, and sorrow. So every one of these emotions is some way of some alteration or some aspect change in those three definitions. For example, he says love right off the bat. Love is joy. So it's accompanied by the idea that it's coming from somewhere. Your joy, that's what he defines love as, is joy over or something and some cause. Okay, and that's his definition of love. I would have a lot more to say about love than that, but that's his definition of love. And he does explains more, but I'm just going into the basic, all of them. So hatred he defines as sorrow, and it's with an external cause of something else. So it's I would say it's an extreme form of sorrow, whereas joy, love would be an extreme form of joy. Inclination, when we are inclined to do something, there's the idea that there's a cause of some object being the cause of joy. So we think, that something's going to bring us joy, so because we think that that's going to bring us joy, we're inclined to do it. Okay? So aversion is sorrow, because we have this idea that something else is going to be the cause of sorrow, so we have an aversion towards. We want to stay away from it. Okay, so inclination and aversion are opposites of one another. So devotion is a love towards something, or towards God, towards another person or something, because we're astonished by it. So that's what devotion is. So we're devoted to our husband or our wife or to God because we're astonished by that person or by God. Derision it's interesting. Makes crazy to me, sort of like the way he defines it, but is a joy that we get from the imagination. Derision is a joy for something we despise, okay, is present, and object we hate. So there's something we despise is present in an object we hate, okay. So that's his definition of derision, okay. So hope is a joy, but it's not constant. So it can be there or it cannot be there. It's based on something from the past or the future, and we're in doubt of it. So we hope it's going to happen, or but we're not sure it's going to happen. Okay, so we're in doubt. Fear is something again is a sorrow instead of hope. They're related to one another. So fear is a sorrow that may or may not happen. Okay, and so it's not constant, and it's the idea of something again from the past or the future, about something that we doubt. So we're not, when we're fearful of something, we doubt it. So we're not sure it's going to happen. We're afraid that it might happen. That's the whole idea that he's trying to say. But it's a sorrow over in that context. So confidence is a joy. And it's associated with past, present, or future, when any doubt is removed. So we're confident because the doubt is gone, and we think we can do it. Despair is sorrow, and the idea of that is associated with past or future, where despair is removed. In other words, it's constant sorrow. That's what basically his idea of despair. So gladness is a joy, and it has the idea associated with it that something that was unhoped for, we didn't know that it was going to happen, or possibly didn't even think that was going to happen, or even expect, or whatever that could happen, and yet it happened. So we're glad. A remorse is a sorrow that something unhoped for has not. Okay, something past is an accompanying idea of something past which unhoped for has happened. That's what remorse. So we didn't want it to happen, and it happened. That's what remorse is. Okay. Commiseration is a sorrow with the accompanying idea of an evil, which happened to somebody else, and that's like ourselves. So, and he has that's associated with compassion, and he sees little difference between the two, but he says that commiseration is more associated to an individual emotion, And compassion is associated more with a habit. So in other words, you have compassion over somebody for the habit they have, maybe is what he's saying, or commiseration is sort of compassion with someone over the emotions that they're feeling, maybe is what he's saying. Favor is a love towards someone else that has benefited us or benefited others. So if you have favor towards somebody else, you look at what they've done towards other people, and so you have that they've done good things, so you give favor towards them or love towards them. Indignation is a hatred towards those who have injured others. Okay? So you're indignant that they have done something terrible to somebody else. Overestimation is when you're thinking too highly of others in consequence of our love for that person. So we have a view towards that person, but it's too high for what they really deserve. Maybe it's an overestimation, is what he's saying. Contempt is when you're thinking too little of someone else, and because of the hatred for them. In other words, you really despise somebody and you have contempt for them, but maybe you're treating them worse than they deserve because of the hatred that you have for them. That's his definition, basically, of contempt. And envy is a hatred, and that there's a sadness at the good fortune of someone else, or is glad when something evil happens to that person. That's his definition, basically, of envy. Compassion, we're back to compassion again, which we had before. It affects a person when we're glad at the prosperity of another person and sad when something bad happens to them. Okay? So, self-satisfaction is a joy that's produced by when we're thinking about ourselves and the power of action that we have. So we're very self-satisfied that we can do this. I'm just going to pause for a second here. The reason why I'm going through all these is because in making any kind of spiritual progress, I think really coming to terms with our emotions and learning how to control our emotions is extremely important, and that's why I'm doing this on emotions, because one of the biggest hindrances to spiritual progress is people's emotions. And so first, before we can learn how to control our emotions, we need to understand what they are, how we got them, where they come from, why they're here, and that's sort of what this video is all about. So humility, it's interesting, his kind of struck me when I looked at his definition of humility, but he basically says it's a sorrow that's produced. We think about our impotency and the helpless state of ourselves, and I think let me just say, I'd say humiliation is, there's a distinction between humility and humiliation. So humiliation is like you said, our impotence and our helplessness, but in a negative sense. But in a positive sense, humility can be looked at in a positive sense, in terms of God, and I'm kind of deviating from Spinoza here, in terms of God, because humility can be seen as something positive when we see ourselves in light of who God is and how we need God. Because humility is really one of the wonderful virtues. So it's hard for me to look at it totally in terms of sorrow. But anyway, so repentance, okay, he says, is a sorrow that we, based on the idea that we've done something, or we know that we have done something by a free decree of our mind. So we did something and we're sorrowful over what we have decided to do. Okay? So pride is thinking, way too much of ourselves. It's basically just a form of it's just for self-love. That's what pride is. He has a lot more to say about all these, but I'm just quickly going through the list. Despondency is thinking too little of ourselves, and so we're basically in a state of sorrow, despondency, and so. But notice it's thinking too little. We should be thinking more of ourselves, but when we're despondent, we're thinking too little. We're not really looking at the situation as it really truly is, I would say. So self-exaltation is a joy. It has the idea of some action that we did, and we are imagining that other people are praising that. That's self-exaltation. Everybody else is going to think I'm so wonderful for doing this. Shame is sorrow, with the idea that other people are going to look at this, and there's an idea of blame. It's like we've done something really terrible, that other people are going to know about this, and this is shame. So regret is a desire, and it's interesting. So it's the desire or longing that we have to possess something, and it's strengthened by the memory of the object, but at the same time restrained by the memory of other things which exclude the existence of the desired object. So we wish we could have something, we desire that we have something, but we regret that we can't have it because something else is hindering that from happening. So that's regret. So we just wish it could be, but it can't really be. Again, these are in my words, kind of defining what he's saying. Emulation is a desire, okay, and it's a desire in us. Somebody else has something. We imagine that others have something else that we desire, and we want to be like them. Okay, so that's emulation. We want to be like them, and we desire it, and we see it as something good. Thankfulness or gratitude is interesting. Desire or love, based on love. We desire to do something good to others because they have had love and done something good for us. So we're thankful because God has done something good to us, so we want to do something back good for God, so we're thankful and we have gratitude. So benevolence is, when we have a desire to do good for somebody else who we look at with pity, the homeless or somebody like that, who's had something terrible happen to them, and so we have benevolence, we have charity, and all these things. So his definition of anger, I don't know. I'll just kind of give it and then say what I think about it. So it's he says a desire, I think sometimes it's an impulse, but he does refer at some point, I think, in here to the impulse is a variation, I think, of desire. So, but anger can be a desire. In other words, somebody can get angry and just decide to do something in their anger, but it also can be something impulsively that happens it just instantaneously to them as a reaction. So, but anyway, he says it's that a desire, we're impelled, and he says through hatred. The anger, it would be through hatred, and hatred when you really hate that person. But somebody can be angry with someone that they love. So he says it's impelled through hatred to injure somebody we hate. And that's what anger is. Whereas what happens if you love somebody and you're angry because of something they did? Well, you dislike what they did. You don't hate them. Maybe, I guess, in some strange sort of way, love is associated with hate. So maybe in a certain sort of way, we hate what they did. Okay, though we love them. So vengeance is definitely associated with desire. It's based on hatred to injure somebody else. Because they've injured us. So we're just getting back at them because they did something else, so we're going to just do the same thing to them, or even worse. Israel and, the state that's happening, with the Palestinians and the world situation. There you go. The perfect example of endless vengeance. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. So, fear is... fear is associated with something that you should do, but you can't do it. It's a desire of it's kind of like there's two dreaded evils, and which one am I going to get? Should I do this or do that or this? It's a fear of doing something, because if I do that, something else may happen. So it's like choosing sort of like what to do. Or can't do because I'm fearful of doing it. Audacity is a desire to do something that there's a danger associated with it, and we should be fearful of this danger. We have the audacity to do it because we're not fearful of this danger. So that's audacity to do something. Consternation is as a man, a person is a desire of avoiding evil because he's restrained by the astonishment of the evil that he's looking at and that he fears. So he looks and he sees what's happening, and he's so astonished and restrained by this evil. There's, like I said, there's a desire of avoiding the evil, and because he's astonished at the evil which he fears. Okay, so courtesy is doing things that please other people, or we do things that avoid doing things that we know that might displease those people. So that's pretty obvious. So it's both doing and omitting. So that's what courtesy is. Ambition is a desire, and he says for glory. I'm going to read something by Cicero, so because he quotes Cicero. So every noble man is led by glory, and even the philosophers who write books about despising glory place their names on the title page. There you go. Okay. So that's what he has to say about ambition. So luxuriousness, I guess is the way he describes it, is is just a desire for good living. Good living. So if we want to live in luxury, we want to have everything, buy this and buy that, and or luxury. It could be anything. It could be even, the luxury of having endless booze. I mean, it could be luxury is just desire. Okay, so drunkenness is the desire for, he says, for drinking. I would say alcohol, and the enjoyment, I guess, of the stupor of being drunk. So avarice is a desire that is associated with riches. Okay, so the love of money. Okay, lust is a desire, and it's associated with sexual intercourse, obviously, and the strength of the libido, or the weakness of the libido. I think we're wrapping this up. Yeah, so those are the main emotions that he really addresses in his book, and there's a conclusion that I'd really like to say, and that he sort of gives, and that the emotions are really a confused idea. Okay, so it's just a confusion, a change in the status of what's happening in somebody's mind, and it's a confused idea, and by which the mind, is in association with the body or some part of the body, and there's a greater or lesser power that's in existence. Okay, and so you have thoughts, and there's an increase of power, or a degree or a decrease of power, and it's determined by the thoughts that you have in relation to another. So all this stuff is happening in your mind, and it's a particular focus on a particular thought, where your mind is focused through thinking on a particular aspect of what's happening in your mind and body, and it's determined to be in that state. So it's a confused idea with greater or lesser power of existence than it had before. So it's a change. Okay, and there can be an increase of power that's there, and the mind is, because of that, is determined and focused to a particular thought rather than another. So again, it's a change from your mind thinking of from one thought to another. It's a change of status. That's what he's saying an emotion is. So so again, I'm doing this video because I think it's really important in terms of the ladder of spiritual ascent. One of the biggest problems that people have is dealing with their emotions, and so later on he goes on how to address the idea of controlling one's emotions. But how can we control one's emotions unless we really clearly understand what emotions are, where they're coming from, how we get them, what power we may or may not have over them. He seems, from what I remember reading, and probably will give another video on, he seems to think that we can have control to a certain extent over our emotions, but the first idea, like I said, is to understand where they come from, what they are. Okay? And so I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, please subscribe if you like the videos. Will Goldstein here, thekingscourt.com.